Welcome to the podcast that will teach you the importance of being earnest.
Wow, this podcast is so deep, like an iceberg, you'll have to listen to it more than once to get it.
On Twitter, vote what's your favorite intro right there.
No, we're not taking a vote. That was right off the dome, I think, for both of us. Anyways, welcome to Not Just Any Book Club. I guess we're jumping right in. We keep doing this where we just do the
I don't
intro
think
and then
I thought that
jump
was just our default intro now.
No, yeah, I guess that's true. But yeah. So welcome. This month, if you caught our episode of Bookends last week,
Or read the title.
read the title, we're reading Ernest Hemingway, and this week is actually his novellas and novels, whereas last week we read short stories. So yeah, all three of us have read Old Man and the Sea and A Farewell to Arms.
Those are the only books I read for this podcast.
Yeah. I actually read Old Man and the Sea this month. Justin actually read A Farewell to Arms this month. Not for this month.
Yeah.
And then we both read the other book separately. And then Luke read something else. What was it? Something in the Sea?
Islands in the Stream.
Islands in the Stream. So yeah, we've read other. Some of us have read other Hemingway. Like I've read For Whom the Bell Tolls and stuff. But we won't talk about that because it's been a while since I read that book.
I've read The Old Man and the Sea twice, so
Yes.
I'm more qualified to talk about it than anybody else here.
I don't think that's true at all. It's a very
I've
short
read Old
book.
Man and the Sea twice.
Got
Oh,
him.
you read it?
We got him.
Ooh.
I was specifically saving reading Old Man and the Sea for the first time for this episode because I
I
knew it was coming because of how much you told me you didn't like it.
I was very lukewarm towards it, as I am with most Hemingway works. I'm guessing that we are starting off with The Old Man and the Sea.
I think that's a bad idea, and I
Oh?
think we should start off with the thing that Luke read because that way we can. Well, I just not because it's single Luke out, but just because that way we can get into the more conversational stuff later instead of
Okay.
just having a conversation and then stopping completely to listen to Luke talk
Okay.
about his book.
Yeah, hopefully Luke can convince me to read this book and read more Hemingway. So, take it away, Luke.
Alright, so I read not Old Man. I read Islands in the Stream. Sorry, they get confused because Islands in the Stream does have its little Old Man in the Sea moment. But
In the title.
it's what I think his last completed books, right? They found it after he died and it was mostly or completely done.
Kafka
And I
moment.
think, yeah, and I think I read somewhere that it was his retirement plan book. If he ever ran out of money in his old age, he was going to publish this book. And then he
Okay.
died, and then he killed himself, and then he never published it. But then, I don't know, his wife found it or something and was published it anyway.
I would guess that that's not 100% true. Because I did some research on Hemingway for my class project in what feels like a million years ago now.
Basically, man.
And he killed himself shortly after he had, oh god, I forget what it was. It was some kind of thing that his hands hurt and he couldn't write like he used to. And so he killed himself shortly after that. So what I would posit is that it's because he couldn't write anymore, or partly. He was obviously depressed for other reasons too. But so what I would imagine this book is that he finished it and he was probably going to rewrite it at some point because Hemingway's known for revising his works a million times. Anyways,
Get wrecked.
Run that then. Yeah, I have no idea where I read that. I just read it somewhere. So I was
Okay.
just saying rando stuff. No guarantee that was what happened at all. But it's definitely either his last or I think it's his last actual book, right? That they went and published. And it's separated into 3 parts. It stars my boy Thomas Hudson, who starts the book as a middle-aged 2-3 times divorced dad of 3, living in Cuba, painting, for a living. He's some like painter guy.
Hmm.
And he's in Cuba. He lives with his buddies.
Hmm.
He doesn't live with his buddies, but all of his buddies are like a bunch of his buddies are on Cuba with
An
him.
an old artist, an artist in his old age living in Cuba. I
Yeah,
wonder who this could be a stand-in
honestly.
for.
Just
Yeah, it's
Ernest
it's
Hemingway
kind
just
of
write
funny.
self-insert fan fiction.
And then that's kind of how the book starts. There's a bunch of his friends in Cuba, and then his sons are coming by for the summer. He's got 3 sons, I think. 2 of them are from different mothers, but they all kind of like grew up together and all kind of like friends. So they're coming by for like a couple weeks or something. And so that's how the book starts. It's like, oh, the kids are coming in. He's not even elderly. He's like middle aged, I think. I think he's like
Hmm.
40 or like late 40s or something. And like he's kind of depressed a little bit. His buddy's definitely depressed. They're all drinking a lot. They drink more than like James Bond in the James Bond movies.
They're pretty shaken.
Oh, you know what's funny actually? I just looked it up because I was interested. Hemingway had 4 wives and he had kids with 2 of them.
Yeah.
So this just keeps matching up with
It's kind of funny how he went and did this. And so like that's kind of the first like part of the 3. The kids come by. There's a crazy old man in the sea moment where one of the kids is hooks a big marlin.
Oh, yeah.
And it's and it's like old man in the sea. It's the biggest marlin you've ever seen, or whatever. And it's nuts. And he's fighting it for like 8 hours, and he's like dying, and his hands are bleeding. Like his dad's like freaking out, but he's like, he's got to catch that fish, man. He needs that fish. It's imperative to his growth as a person that he catches this fish. And it was an awesome scene. I liked it almost as much as Old Man in the Sea.
Mm.
It's like a different perspective, right? Because the Old Man in the Sea was like an old dude doing his like final stand, I still got it kind of setup, and he's doing it with like nada, right? He's doing it with like a fishing pole or something and
Yeah.
like a tugboat. This guy's like on his dad's yacht. He's got like a harness, and he's got the road, and he's got a team of people like helping him out. His dad's steering. His dad's buddy is like coaching him through it. His brother's grabbing him drinks so he doesn't get heat stroke and pass out. So it's like a different dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was fun comparing the two.
And I think that's interesting. I want to say something, but I think we'll get to it when we actually get to Old Man in the Sea. So I won't.
Okay.
I'll just keep it in mind.
And there's some stuff going down. And then like each part is a time skip. So it's not like, oh, this happens and the next part and then like something else happens. It's like this all kind of was like part 1. Um at the end of part 1, his 2 youngest kids die. So he's got 1 kid left, right? Oh, I forgot to say, massive spoilers for this book.
Oh yeah, and then they all die. Oh, by the way, spoilers.
Yeah, sorry. That's on me. You might want to like do something to the edit for that.
Okay.
But it's kind of like just how the story goes. His 2 kids die,
Yep.
which is sad. And then we get a skip. Right. Now we're in World War II in Cuba, and we got an even more depressed Thomas Hudson. Why is he more depressed? Oh shit. His oldest kid just died in World War II. Now he's
Very
now he's
cool.
kidless. Yeah, now he's very sad. Now he drinks more, and then he's like works for the US. He's like doing recon in the ocean. They turned his boat into like a patrol boat.
Yeah.
Right, and now it's kind of like depressed, cynical. Thomas Hudson is trying to figure out life, the war. He's struggling. And then, he just keeps thinking about his kids and he's sad. And then we take another bit of a skip. We're still in World War II. But now my boy Thomas is hunting some Germans because I think one of the submarines crashed, and there's like a group of Germans, and to cover their escape, they like killed an entire like village or something of people.
Hmm.
And so now he's like, and he kind of like moves on from thinking about his kids. Now he just wants to like kill some Nazis.
That's the perfect way to get over familial death. Go
All
on a
right, so now it's
Nazi
like
hunting
him,
spree.
like trying to hunt down these Nazis down in Cuba with his converted with his converted yacht.
Does he hit them with a yacht or like?
No, no, no. The U-boats crash. They're on the island. There's a shootout, and I'm pretty sure he dies at the end.
Spoilers
Massive
again.
spoilers again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's interesting. The whole time you were talking, I was trying to figure out what the title meant. Like, I guess there's all these like connected events, and so like the connected events are the islands in the stream. The little breaking up of the like, I don't know, like meaningful moments in the breaking up the like meaninglessness. I don't know. I haven't read it, so I'm gonna stop trying to trying to guess what what the
The point of the story.
the point of the story is.
What do you think, Luke? What was the point of the story?
Don't ask me what the point of a Hemingway story is. You know me better than that.
You know what the point you or well we kind of agree on what the point of Old Man in the Sea is from what we said on Discord.
I don't remember what we said. Was it something
Okay.
like "What is a man"?
Well, yeah, we'll get to it, I'm sure.
Okay.
Do we want to talk about Old Man in the Sea first or
Probably Old Man in the Sea.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a bit of a segue there.
Yeah.
One
Sure.
one thing though
Oh,
that so
Mm,
Pierce already pointed out a bunch of like the self-inserty stuff, right,
yeah.
about him or whatever. There's a there's a pretty famous picture of him and this famous painter dude who caught um a big marlin, like a huge one, and it was half eaten by sharks while he pulled it up. Huh. Whoa, that's crazy.
Whoa, that's almost like the story.
Yeah. And then some of his friends lost their youngest son to illness in Cuba, and that affected him. And then he was also in World War II. He outfitted his own yacht with gear to hunt down U-boats. So he did
So
that.
so this character is a combination of him and this painter guy from Cuba who he met in real life,
Yes.
basically.
I'm gonna
Okay.
assume mostly him though.
That's interesting. Just some
Hmm.
guy. He's just his most famous story of all time and the story that was released after he died are based off of this like painter guy who he met.
You know, he stayed the summer with him.
Oh.
Yeah,
Huh.
I think they were friends.
They were buddies.
Henry Mike Strader.
That's
okay.
interesting.
You know what's not interesting? Old Man in the Sea. No, I found it
Get out of
interesting.
here.
I found it.
Get off of the podcast.
I thought Old Man in the Sea was good. And I read it. Why do I keep on bragging about it? Like, hey, I read this book twice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, by the way, he read the book twice because I
Out of
never
spite.
believed him. No, I never believed you that the book was bad, and I was like, no, Hemingway is really good. And then I continued not reading this because I was saving it. But I'm like like I don't believe that his most famous work is bad, considering what I've read of his other stuff. And then you read it a second time, and you were like, oh, I appreciate it more.
Yeah.
And
Never
now I've read it and it's actually really good. And I'm here to tell all of you people out there, it's actually really good.
In case you were wondering.
In case you were wondering.
Yeah.
Yeah. Real quick, I guess plot summary. There's an old man named Santiago. He's got this boy. What is he, like 12 or something? 13?
Yeah.
who helps him fish, but like he hasn't caught anything in a long time, and so the boy's parents made him go work for somebody else who actually catches fish. And so now this old man, every day he goes out on his own, he doesn't catch anything, he comes back in. And then one day he goes out and he hooks a big fish. Big fish.
Mm-hmm.
And so what ensues is that this fish pulls him out to sea, and he spends several days trying to tire out this fish and slowly reel it in and, you know, eat a little bit, like nourish himself. He doesn't bring anything out with him except for like water, so he had to catch fish to eat.
Mm.
I think the boy gave him something and he ate that too. But anyways, so he has to like persevere, and it's a story of like perseverance over a great obstacle, a great challenge, and then he completes this great challenge. He catches the marlin. It's huge. I think at the end of the book, what do they say, like 18 feet or something ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And he puts it on the side of the boat because he's like, I can't, if I try and lift this thing up out of the water, A, the boat will probably tip over, and B, even if I get it up, like the boat's just, it's going to weigh the boat down too much. And so he puts it on the side and he starts heading back to Cuba. He's like several days out in the middle of the ocean at this point. As he's getting back, repeatedly, because he had to, the fish is like bleeding into the water. Sharks pick up the trail and he beats them back, but slowly they pick away at this marlin to the point that by the time he gets back to Cuba, the marlin is like nothing but a head and a tail, essentially. Like they took almost everything. Like the skeleton is still there, but I mean like the actual meat is just like the head and the tail. And so he gets back and he's tired and beat down and bruised, and so he goes to sleep.
Probably dies. Maybe.
No, I don't think so. I mean, he's very old, so he could have, but like not at the end of the story.
I mean, I thought it was open ended, where it's like kind of implied that it's just maybe, almost.
I don't
Honestly,
think so.
Okay.
But the town is like very proud of him. The I keep saying little boy. I think he's like a teenager. The boy like gets him some coffee and some breakfast and stuff. And everyone's like, "Oh my God, he brought back this huge fish. It's a shame what happened." They're all proud of him, and he sleeps and he dreams about lions. And that's that. That's basically the whole story. I could have summed it up even shorter if I wanted to, and just went, old man catch big fish, but
We're more nuanced than that.
But sharks eat it. That's basically the whole story. So, Justin, why don't you like this book that much?
Well, it's because I appreciate
putting you on the spot.
Yeah,
putting you on the spot for
like,
for not liking a Pulitzer Prize winning book.
Sorry. Okay. Well, okay. It's like I get why he did this. It's because of well, not why I wrote the book, but like why it's so he's so fixated on the fish and on the process of fishing. It gets very, very exhausting to read because it just goes on for so long, and I'm like, come on. Is anything else gonna happen? I also I'm not a very outdoorsy kind of guy. I run a podcast. What do you think I am?
Well, see, that's the thing. I was worried that I was going to like it because it's Hemingway, but I wasn't going to enjoy reading it because it's about fishing, and I hate fishing. I really do not like fishing.
I don't like fishing.
But I liked it. I liked the descriptions of him like getting ready to fish. I liked how he was thinking about like, oh, I've got to do this and that, and I have to, and I'm the conditions of the water and all that. Which it was just kind of surprising to me because I don't like fishing at all in real life, but I really enjoyed it. I just think it's kind of a credit to Hemingway's writing that he was able to make it sound interesting to someone who doesn't like fishing as much as I don't.
Well, it failed with me, so I mean, like, I don't know. And it's just I also like characters, and I Santiago's one trait is that one of his few traits is that he's very determined to get this fish. And I mean, I don't remember the exact reason why I did it, besides pride or like, I guess, dignity, something like that. And he just really wants to get this fish, and I'm like, it's very simple. And I'm guessing it's just the way it was written. I don't know, man. And again, this book would be ruined if it was like a flashback. Like, all right, Santiago, the reason why he wants to get this fish is because he was traumatized by people laughing at him who didn't get a fish. And I know it's not that kind of book.
He also clearly doesn't care about any of that. Like, he
Yeah.
doesn't care what people think about him.
He doesn't.
To be honest. Well, I think you're kind of coming at this book the wrong way. Honestly,
I am.
I think
Or
it's
preferences.
the way that I feel about it now after reading it is that I feel like it is, it's kind of like a masculine philosophy novella, I would say. It's clearly like a book about even if it's not like it's directly more about stoicism and like the hero kind of thing, kind of a hero thing, but it's clearly like a major, you could compare it directly to traditional masculinity, right? And so I think it's a novel which is kind of espousing this philosophy, which is like a combination of stoicism and some other things of just like achieving your goals no matter what.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like you might have come at it the wrong way, expecting a lot of things to happen in a story about a man who catches a fish.
And then reading it again. Now there's no excuse. I knew it was coming. I'm just like, I just not asking that there's more because again, Hemingway is, I'm not depth. Depth is the weird word, but like more to it than fishing. I don't know. I don't want to describe it, but since you mentioned stoicism, Luke, Luke and I are both I've read Marcus Aurelius's stoicism or meditations, and Luke's in the process of / didn't finish reading it.
I read it.
You read it?
Yeah. I hated it.
Oh, do you disagree with the philosophy?
He gave it like 2 stars on Goodreads.
Yeah. It's like, oh my god, dude, this guy was terrible. How is he not depressed? At least Hemingway was depressed when he thought like that a little bit, you know? This guy did not seem depressed at all. He just like really was too into it with like religious zeal. I guess he was religious. That was the whole bit. But
well, so I feel like, and this is kind of the thing with like what's interesting about Hemingway's take on masculinity to me is that it doesn't exactly fit in line with what us as modern people think of as traditional masculinity. Not because like stoicism is obviously a part of that definition, but this is what I was going to bring up when you talked about how that guy's kid had help catching the marlin. Hemingway has Santiago wish that the boy was there to help him several times, which I feel like a lot of what traditional masculinity gets a bad rap for is the like do it yourself attitude, like pull yourself up and do it on your own. But Hemingway's brand of masculinity, he didn't seem to think that way. He seemed to think like, no, like get help if you need it or want it. You don't need to do it on your own. Doing it on your own is something that you should be proud of yourself for doing, like Santiago was. It's something that is, you should have pride if you are able to do it, and it is glorious if you're able to do it. However, wanting help is not a bad thing. And I think that like that continued with Islands in the Stream. That he like had that direct reference to it. It almost seems, and that kid had help. And it doesn't, from the way that you described it, it doesn't seem like it's any less important for him to like achieve this goal than it was for Santiago, even though he had help to do it.
Yeah, that was like there's a whole bit to give a bit more depth into like the whole dynamic of it. It was like the brothers kept saying, like asking, like, "Hey, I could take over. Your feet are bleeding. You're gonna pass out." And the kid was like, "No, no, I don't need any help. I got this." And so it's like the adults were making it as easy as possible for him to do it,
Mm-hmm.
but nobody else was gonna do the task, you know?
Right, right. He still wanted to do the actual
Yeah,
catching himself.
yeah.
Hmm. I'm still not convinced that this book is gonna be something I revisit on the daily, but like,
I wouldn't
I get
revisit
it.
on the daily either, but it's very short and it's quick to read. So
Hmm.
something you
Yeah,
could revisit.
yeah. I mean, I don't. What, I mean, I don't know what else to add to it. I mean, there's a bunch of symbols that apparently are religious, and Hemingway has kind of stomped that out. But do we believe in death of the author, or we kind of ignore the author's
I think
interpretation?
I think it's pretty clear that some of it is a little bit religious. There's the thing where he's like putting the mask on his shoulder, and I didn't
Like a
immediately like
crucifix.
yeah, I didn't immediately track all of the like religious symbols that I saw people have pointed out before. But that one I was immediately like, oh, this is like, you know, it's like oh, catching the fish was like his cross to bear or whatever. Like that was that I saw. Um
Mhm.
so it I don't know. It feels like it's not a religious story. I don't think I wouldn't go that far. That's probably what Hemingway had a problem with, I would imagine.
Mhm.
But I feel like there's definitely some religious symbols in here. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
the mass thing that I just talked about.
I just wish I was more emotionally invested in this book. I mean, you can argue for some of Hemingway's other books, like Farewell to Arms, which I also read. More emotionally invested in that. It's just here, like, um, Santiago just didn't feel human. Like there was no not like there's no humanity to him. It's just like I just didn't relate to him. And I know like the beginning of the book, like the first third of the book is just him hanging out with the kid, just talking about stuff. I'm like,
Yeah.
that was cool, but like I still didn't feel like an emotional attachment to him. And
I disagree. I feel like Hemingway sets the scene pretty well as far as like this guy hasn't caught anything in a long time, and some of the other fishermen laugh at him, and the boy's parents even made him do it. Like they're set the boy's parents are essentially making Santiago go out on his own and be alone the whole time out on the water because they made their boy join other fishermen. um and so I don't know, to me Hemingway kind of sets the scene as far as Santiago being like a character you can feel for pretty well, I think.
I am well, that's just like your opinion, man.
Sorry, Justin. I'm with Pierce on this one, man.
Yeah.
Santiago feels like a real dude, just like an
Yeah.
old guy who's dedicated his life to fishing, trying to give himself that last hurrah. Like I
Yeah.
can still do it, man. And then he goes and he finds it, and then he's dedicated to his task. I don't know if you ever seen old people, dude, but they kind of like regress a little bit into like the couple of things that they really like doing. Like
Yeah.
if my grandma misses bingo on Mondays, all hell will break loose. So that's kind of why that's kind of how I rationalize his kind of one track mindset a little bit. Like he's an old dude. Fishing is his thing, you know?
Yeah.
Mhm.
That makes sense. I didn't think of it like that.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it is a good point. It's just like I don't relate to it.
You just hate
Feelings
fishermen.
don't care about your
Dustin.
facts.
You just hate fishermen. You hate them.
I just don't relate to them, man.
You hear that, all you working class fishermen who listen to our podcast?
Well, preferably while you're not fishing.
Justin does not relate to you.
Yeah, don't talk to me about fish. Just don't. I'll walk away.
I don't know. I feel like this book is extremely well written. I feel like you can't even deny that. It feels to me like it's short enough to where the fishing doesn't outstay its welcome. Because it's only, my edition is like 120 pages long, 125. Yeah. It's, to me, I would be hard pressed to call any book perfect. But this is pretty close to me, I think.
Holy cow.
I think yours is right on that one, man. I don't know what perfect is, but this thing's got to be pretty close.
Yeah.
For what it sets out to do, I guess.
Begrudgingly. Yeah, sure. I guess.
I mean, I got nothing to say to that. I mean, I'm just like, yeah, that's you, man. I don't have anything.
Yeah, I mean, unlike Pierce, right? I like to fish. Me and my buddies, we go out fishing together.
In Iowa?
Yeah, in Idaho.
Idaho.
All right. We go ice fishing in the winter. We do normal generic fishing in the summer. And it's like, some of these people are hardcore. My buddy's dad goes ice fishing 8 hours at a time. He won't even talk. He'll just sit there for 8 hours and fish, man. So I kind of get it. Yeah, he'll bring like a couple granola bars and he'll sit there for 8 hours. Like it's like Santiago is not that off from a real dude. I've seen people like him.
Yeah. And Hemingway liked to fish, so I'm sure he understands the mindset pretty well too. I mean, you would have to write a book like this, I think. But yeah, I don't know. And I think, like, if you're looking for a normal story that's just like fun to read, I think this is good to read. Don't get me wrong, but if you're looking for something that's just like fun to read, this might not be it, but it is a really good read. There's some depth to it. There's some.
I can't see, apparently.
It's Hemingway. There's lots of depth to it. It's, to me, an interesting view on masculinity, which is, traditional and also not what we would think of as traditional at the same time. It's interesting. And then there's also, I really feel like the descriptions are good enough to string you along this like very simple plot. The descriptions are vivid. I don't feel like he repeats himself too much, considering, the the landscape around him for most of the book is just water. So
landscape.
Yeah. It's I don't know. I think honestly, when you're ready to read this, I think everyone should give this a shot. It's short enough that you could read it in one day if you wanted to. Like, it's the kind of thing that, again, I think is near perfect, at least. And it's I think lots of people could pull something out of it, and it's just like a good read. Like, I don't know. I kind of don't know what else to say about it.
I don't have anything to say. I just like, it's a book. I don't know. I just say, put Pierce's expectations aside. Just look. I mean, it's good to lower your expectations for everything, because if they exceed them, boom, you're just like, you're surprised anyways.
Yeah,
I mean,
don't. I mean, yeah, you shouldn't go into anything expecting it to be perfect or near perfect. But like, I've read it, and my opinion now is that. But yeah,
yeah. We can
I
keep on
like.
going back and forth. It's like,
I just don't know what. Yeah, we should move on to a farewell to arms. But
I mean,
I just don't know what other way to put it. Is I guess the point for me.
we all have
Um,
different tastes and preferences.
And Justin's tastes and preferences go against the Pulitzer Prize.
Hey, I mean, not. Hey, I.
Sorry, Justin.
Hey, sometimes they give the award to things that don't deserve it. I can't name an example, but it's probably out there. You're someone. Okay, we all have opinions. Okay, that's all. If
Okay.
there's anything you've learned from this entire segment, it's that I'm very apathetic towards apathetic towards Hemingway. I mean, sometimes he surprises me. Sometimes we're just like, I don't think I've ever read anything that's explicitly like bad from him.
Mhm.
Maybe in my initial reading of Old Man and the Sea, but then once I had my expectations tempered, it's not bad. It's good.
I think, well, I think above anything else, as far as like going into Hemingway, like obviously you expect he is like one of the most lauded and respected American authors of all time. But you shouldn't expect it to be amazing. Although I think it is, and I think after reading it, most people, I would hope, would say the same. But you should still read it and give it a chance, even if you're like not sure if you'll like it, given what Justin has been saying. Because I spoke to this, I forget, he was like an English major or something. And he was talking about the differences between the ways that British and American people write. And he said that, before the early 1900s, there wasn't like there was a distinction, but it wasn't like massive. There wasn't like a massive distinction between British and American authors. But he said probably the two biggest influences that changed the direction of the way that American authors write were Hemingway and Steinbeck. They kind of, what's that?
Two banger authors.
They kind of completely influenced the way that Hemingway, probably more so just because like he's famous for the way that he writes. I would imagine, but this guy said both names. Um, they completely influence the way that Americans write today. Like we write much simpler, and there's more meaning in less words. We just describe the scene, and then there's like some meaning tucked into it rather than like using incredibly flowery prose the entire time, and then it's harder to decipher what's actually happening. And not to say British people don't do that too, but there was still like a split from what I was talking about with this guy.
So, question: do you like Lovecraft's writing style?
Yeah, I think generally. I think like he does get a little. He's kind of like
He's the
how
anti-Hemingway. Just saying
he's
that.
he's kind of like how, yeah, and what I was about to say is he's similar to Victorian authors in that they use a lot of like they overdo it with describing things. That's why I don't like Victorian authors typically when I read them. Um but I like it with Lovecraft, and I think it's probably to do with concept. I like the conceptual part of what he's writing about better. But
Yeah,
he's like them, but instead of like using flowery language, he uses like big mumbo jumbo scientific words, basically.
exactly.
Yeah. But yeah. Anyways, farewell to arms, guys. We ready?
Yeah.
Farewell to arms. Yep.
All right. Justin, would you like to plot this book?
What? I don't.
You don't remember?
I don't.
I can do it, I guess. So we have another little Hemingway insert here because this book follows, oh god, what's his name? what's his name?
I know he's referred to as baby a lot. Just like
Yeah, Lieutenant Henry. He is he's a lieutenant. He volunteers for the Italian army as a medic. Which I don't believe Hemingway volunteered for the army, but I believe he worked as an ambulance driver in Italy during World War One. Um, so little mini Hemingway insert once again. He writes about what he knows, I guess. He was also on the ground in the Spanish Civil War, and he wrote a book about the Spanish Civil War. So again, writing about what he knows. But anyway, back to A Farewell to Arms. We follow Lieutenant Henry. He is at the beginning of the book. He's just kind of like hanging out before they get like redeployed somewhere else. And he meets at some point a British nurse, Catherine, who is working in the hospital near the camp. She's working like somewhere nearby.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like
But he goes there because like his friend from the military is like trying to talk up this other nurse, and he meets Catherine, and he really likes Catherine, and he's like, "I'm gonna come back to see you sometimes." Um, and they're like, the story is mostly about how their relationship blossoms. Like I would say that is kind of the central thing that people pull away from and love about this book is the relationship that blossoms between Henry and Catherine. Um, However, this is also a book about World War One, and so he is eventually sent back into the war, and he gets injured. I believe he gets shrapnel all up and down his leg. It's been a
yeah.
while since I've read it. Um, he gets shrapnel all up and down his leg, so he gets taken to a hospital, and he's basically given medical leave for a long time, and then he gets moved to an American hospital. And Catherine like comes to see him. Or it's like Americans came in and they set up a hospital, although they're not in the war yet, or something. I don't remember.
So like
Yeah, I know he gets moved to a hospital where the people speak English instead of Italian. Um, yeah, there's a bunch of doctors that come in and look at his leg, and like some of them want to give him surgery, some of them are just like you got to be on bed rest for a long time. And eventually it's like he picks the one that takes less time to heal, right? Like that gets him
Yeah.
on his feet sooner. Like he gets like sick of the hospital. I don't remember. Again, it's been a while. I read
No,
this
I
in
think you're right.
November. Yeah. For some reason, he decides that he's going to pick the one that takes less time to heal, and then he is eventually. Oh, I think it's because he wants to hang out with Catherine, like outside
yeah,
of the hospital.
it's a romance novel.
Yeah, right. And so, but what he doesn't realize is that as soon as he does that, like they call him back to the front almost immediately, essentially, or they call him back not necessarily to the front, but they call him back to service, definitely. Um, and then he's gonna get like sent to the front, and he ends up deserting pretty much. I mean, he does desert, but he ends up like um during a retreat, like there's a big Italian retreat, he ends up like separated from the rest of the army, right? And then he uh I didn't get the feeling that he meant to desert at first, and then he, unless I could be misremembering, but then like he got lost, and then he found his way back to where some Italians were, and they were pulling people um and being like, "Oh, where's your uniform? Are you like out here deserting? Where's the rest of your unit?" And then they were just like shooting them. Um
Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah,
There,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Shooting him from like from the bridge, right? Or
yeah.
what? Yeah.
No, there
He
is
was
a
near they were like pulling people who were approaching the town and
yeah,
like giving them like a really lopsided trial basically.
Yeah.
um and so he seeing this before he gets caught, or no, he is caught, and he's seeing like that they're going to kill them all essentially. Um and so he like makes a break for it, right? And he jumps in the river, and he like flows down the
Yeah,
river
all
a
the way to
while.
Switzerland,
Yeah. Um,
neutral Switzerland.
no, he doesn't.
No,
That's not
no,
yet.
he's still in Italy.
He
Oh,
flows down the river. He ends up in a town closer to where Catherine
oh,
is.
I'm scared.
Yeah.
Yeah, that. Yeah,
Um, and so they like some of the people there know him, and they're like, "Oh, if you're deserting, because now he is deserting because he just ran away from punishment.
Yeah,
Um, oh, if you're deserting, like we've got other people here. I can't. I don't know. It's something like the bartender. He's like, I don't think I have space, but if you're nearby and you need a meal, I can help. I can try and help you out as much as I can." And he's like, "No, I got something to take care of." And so eventually he leaves to go find Catherine, and he's like, "Let's run away together." Um, and I forget exactly how it ends up happening. I believe they stay somewhere for a while in Italy, like like a few days or something, and then
yeah,
they're like setting up. They're getting set up to leave to go to Switzerland because it's neutral.
mhm,
Um, and right before they're like gonna get caught, like Henry gets tipped off by someone he knows, that the Italian army they're like coming. They know you're here. They're coming to get you. They're gonna obviously court martial you or whatever. You're gonna be in big trouble. And so they get in the boat in like a storm and go to Switzerland, across a lake or something. And
yeah,
Switzerland's landlocked, so it couldn't be across the
no,
Mediterranean. Um, and so they go across the lake, and they get to Switzerland, and then it's really happy and nice. The journey is hard to Switzerland, I believe. It's like raining the whole time and disgusting, but life in Switzerland is nice. And at some point, Catherine became pregnant with Henry's child. That's important. Um, and so they're basically like waiting around for the baby to be born. They're kind of like both a little excited. It seems like, from what I remember, Henry seemed a little bit tentative at first about having a child. He wasn't sure.
mm,
But as it's gotten closer, if I'm remembering correctly, he is, he's like, oh, I'm gonna be a dad. Like that's pretty cool. He's worried about like how much time he'll spend with the baby and how much time he'll spend with Catherine. Again, I might be remembering that wrong, but I feel like that's true.
yeah,
Um, and then eventually she goes into labor. I'm gonna spoil it. I don't care. We're gonna spoil it eventually anyway
yeah,
because we all love the ending so much.
yeah.
Should I spoil it? Hold on. This is
It,
actually
it is a great ending though. So
should, but the question that I have for you guys is, should
okay,
I spoil it?
you basically spoiled every single plot point up until up until the
You're
ending.
true. This is true. These are true facts. Anyhow, so eventually she goes into labor, and it's like a tough labor. Like she's struggling. But the doctors like want, and the nurses are not really giving him all the information he wants. Um, and eventually she's asking for him, and he goes in to see her, and oh gosh, I forget exactly what she's saying. She's like, "Well, will you love me forever?" or something. She's like basically like, "I love you," and oh, what sort of baby was it? She's asking about the baby, and she's talking about how she's hurting, and um,
Something like
she's
that.
worrying about Henry too. She's telling him to go eat. Um, oh no, the nurse is telling him to. Okay, well, anyways, the Catherine is worried about the baby and Henry. And then Henry, something seems wrong. He's outside in the hall. Um, he gets called in, right?
Mm,
And then Catherine is essentially she's freaking out a little bit, but she's
yeah.
very weak. And then she says, "I'm going to die," and then waits and says, "I hate it." Um, and she's being weird and asking. Henry's worried. He's like, "Do you want me to get you anything?" And she's talking too much because the doctor's trying to help her, and Henry has to go outside and wait.
And then I really like how Hemingway wrote this part because like
Mm-hmm.
it goes into his internal monologue and just go. I forget what he says exactly, but you can just sense like his mind is racing. It's like what happens? She does die. She won't. But what happens? She does. And goes back and forth
Yeah.
like a ping pong match. Very effective use of language there.
Yeah. And then he goes out into the hall, and well, she dies while he's out in the hallway.
Mm.
And he's like, "Is there anything I should do tonight?" You know, and the doctor's essentially like, "No, just grieve. We can handle it later." And he doesn't want to talk about it with the doctor. Uh,
Yeah.
and then I love the last paragraph because he goes in. The nurse tells him he can't, and he's like, "No, all of you get out. Like I'm gonna say goodbye to Catherine." And the last paragraph goes, "But after I had got them out and shut the door and turned off the light, it wasn't any good. It was like saying goodbye to a statue. After a while, I went out and left the hospital and walked back to the hotel in the rain."
Very effective ending.
Yeah. And so yeah, this story is very beautiful to me for many, many reasons. I love this book. This actually kicked off kind of a new trend for me with reading. I'm reading so much more than I was before. This was the first book. I read this in November of last year, and since then I've read like 20 books so far this year, and I read like 15 or 20 between this book and the end of the year. So I've read like 40-ish books
Holy
since I
cow.
read this book in the last 4 months.
4 months.
Yeah. So um this kind of, I loved this book a lot, and I
Chasing the
was
high.
it kind of yeah, chasing the high a little bit, but it kind of like reminded me why I like to read again, which is good, I think, to have in a book every once in a while. So it's kind of kicked me into overdrive.
Someday I'll. I mean, I found a few books that like kind of ignited that like, ooh man, I want to start reading again. And then it's like, oh, it's just a phase. So far, I mean, Lord of the Rings, I'm reading that now. Oh, spoiler for our next month, but yeah.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it. It just hasn't kicked up the drive. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about World of Arms, which Pierce really likes, and I this might be my favorite Hemingway. That's favorite Hemingway novel, which is not a very big contest because considering I think I've only read 2 novels by him.
Yeah, and one
Um,
of them was a novella.
yeah,
Not even a full length novel.
yeah. I mean, Luke, what did you think of it?
I thought it was okay. I wasn't
Oh,
not
Oh,
calling it a favorite by any means.
oh.
oh,
The whole
Wow, we
first
have
half of the book I thought was boring and forgettable. And then the second half, after he deserts, is like, oh, the book's getting good now. And then it just got better and better until the end, and then it like peaked.
yeah.
yeah.
I guess my biggest problem with it was the dialogue. I we discussed this briefly, but here's just like he's gonna rip into me.
I'm gonna push back. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of the dialogue between Catherine and Henry. Well, Henry's the last name, so what is Catherine's last name?
Uh,
Barkley.
Barkley.
Yeah. A lot of it it just seemed really melodramatic. A lot of like them testing for their love for each other. It's like, will you still love me? If this happened, yes, I will. How about when this happened? Yes, I will. It's a lot of lovey-dovey stuff. And I like to I like to think that
Oh
it's
my God, I didn't realize this is what you were gonna say. I'm pushing back on you so hard now. Go ahead, finish what you were saying. Finish it. Go ahead.
well, I'm scared. It's just didn't make for it was a lot of there was just a lot of back and forth with just I mean I like the way that Hemingway writes dialogue. It didn't like what they were saying. Just the characterization just kind of didn't make me buy the romance, which is kind of the focal point of the book. And we need more romance books written by men. Come on. I mean, I don't know if this is classified
Yeah,
as a romance book.
more romance written from the male perspective. I actually agree. I thought it was interesting to see a romance novel written from a male perspective.
I can't think of another one besides maybe The Great Gatsby.
Um,
That's not a romance.
The Fault in Our Stars.
John Green.
I haven't
Oh, yeah.
actually read it, but
I don't plan on reading it.
yeah, I don't plan on reading it either. However, that is a romance novel. Technically, it's a YA romance written from a male perspective.
But hey,
however, it is in the book, I believe, actually a female's perspective. So it's a man writing a female's perspective on a romance.
That is true. Yeah. Guys like romance too. Let's go. But yeah, I mean that's my thing. That's my big complaint where I just didn't buy. But okay, actually, hold on. But I do also want to praise the dialogue in some other aspects. The romance I kind of bought. I mean, it just the dialogue threw me off. I mean, I could kind of buy the romance. I mean, towards the end, I was like, okay, now they're actually in love and all that. Which like at the beginning, which was like, oh, it's very playful. Which I get. That's how romance works. But just like and make for I didn't feel the tension with that. Well, they won't they stuff. But I did like how it like Italian's written plain English and like there's some mistranslation, well not mistranslations, like it's written in a way where it's like I think one of the lieutenants or one of the soldiers keeps on referring to Henry as baby, and like that doesn't translate well in America. In America, speak American. English, in English. And I like
Hemingway does that a lot actually. I mean he wrote I think a Clean Well Lighted Place also he also uses that.
Yeah.
He writes like that in For Whom the Bell Tolls because they're in Spain during the Civil War. I think it works especially well because it feels like I'm reading a book that was originally written in that language and then translated to English. And so it gives this kind of like foreign feel that you might not necessarily get if they just wrote it normally and said it was, oh, it takes place in this country.
Yeah. And I think one of my most interesting parts of the book was like when Henry tells the joke about his leg and it's like, hey, just cut it off or something like that. And the joke doesn't land because like, I guess it doesn't translate well in Italian. And the Italian people are just like, what did he say? Did he actually say that literally? And I was like, oh, just forget it. It was a bad joke. And I'm like, I like that he kept that in because I was like, oh, it just added to the realism. But yeah. And there's some interesting quotes about like how them musing about how war, and a lot of the book is just like them, just like a lot of camaraderie, just like boys fooling around during the war. It feels real. It's just the romance I didn't love, and
all right. I'm gonna push back on you on the dialogue because your complaint, the big complaint that I heard that I am definitely pushing back on you on is the lovey-dovey stuff, and not because I don't disagree that it feels very lovey-dovey, which makes it feel not realistic, right? However, I would argue that is the point. I say that a lot when I talk with you about Hemingway, Justin, but it's true every time. Maybe not every time, but most of the time. Yeah, so the book, it's a romance novel, but it's also a novel about World War One, right? And so a lot of the descriptions, which I've heard people complain about this, are very shallow and a little repetitive and very simple, right? They're very simple descriptions. The reason for this is because our main character, is a World War One. It makes sense. There's like this sense of despair about the war is never going to end. Like this is just going to happen forever, and everything sucks, and it always will suck, and this is terrible. And the World War, well, the Great War at the time, the Great War has been terrible for all of us, and people are dying senselessly, and there's this overwhelming sense of despair throughout, I would say, the whole book, outside of some scenes between Henry and Catherine. And the reason why I'm pushing back on the lovey-dovey dialogue, even though I agree it's over the top, is because that is the point. It's supposed to be so there's a super clear distinction that Hemingway draws between Henry's interactions and what he thinks about like the war and the soldiers and the world at large, and how he acts and what he thinks when he's around Catherine. That there's this, and I think it's purposeful that Hemingway is creating this barrier between not writing style, his writing style is the same, but like feeling, I guess.
Yeah, tone.
How each part feels to read. He's doing it on purpose.
That is a good point. Makes me appreciate that choice more. Luke, do you have any special insight into this?
No.
Okay.
I still think the dialogue was like okay.
I mean,
yeah, and I agree with you that I really like the style that Hemingway employs with dialogue, where it's just a lot of like back and forth. Like
yeah,
it's
so do I.
just the dialogue, which I think is like, I don't hate it when, authors break up dialogue with what the characters are doing while they're speaking. However, I think which is a huge thing with Hemingway, I think it makes it more clear what they're talking about. Like you can get it's really easy to get the flow of the conversation when the conversation is literally the whole like thing that he's writing. Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter really who's. Well, no. I was getting confused with the clean, well lighted place, where it doesn't really matter who is speaking, because like it could be attributed to either or something like that. So yeah, I guess my main complaint is now rather rendered invalid, or
I told you I was going to push back on it.
Yeah.
And then I found out what part of the dialogue you were complaining about, and I was like, "Oh, damn.
No, you got it.
I'm really going to push back on this." Yeah, and I think like I don't know. I personally really enjoyed it most of the way through. I think the beginning is slower than the rest of the book.
I mean, that's what I really enjoyed. It's just like guys just fooling around.
Guys being dudes.
Yeah, because
that was your favorite part.
Yeah, it takes away from. I mean, okay, not to say that war is good, because like war is good. War, like, he focuses on the camaraderie ship between men on the battlefield, and rather than I mean, like, he describes the battles and like people die, but like a lot of the time, it's just waiting around. Except, and sometimes war will hit you unexpectedly. Because I remember there was one scene where there was just one guy talking, and then all of a sudden, he gets hurt. I don't know if he gets shot or like there's an explosion happening. There's a major difference between those.
Wasn't it artillery? There was like
Artillery,
artillery fire.
yes, it was that. So sometimes, even in times of just like being serene, something unexpected will happen. So
yeah. I will say also, you brought up the camaraderie. I hate writing in books. And but I got my copy of A Farewell to Arms from Half Price Books, and the person who had it before me wrote in it. It was a little annoying, but I actually kind of grew to like it a little bit because it was interesting getting someone else's perspective. Anyhow,
do you know who it was, or is it
I
just
don't.
like,
I do
okay.
not. But the one thing I will say about something they wrote, there's a moment where he's talking with his like main friend, whose name I cannot remember, the one who keeps calling him baby, like you said.
Gino Bonello?
Yeah. Is that his name? He makes like a gay joke. Like he makes a gay joke in reference to Henry, because Henry won't go out with him to like the brothels and stuff or whatever. Like he won't go out and just see women. And so he makes a gay joke at his expense. And the person who had it before me underlined it and wrote "gay?" And I'm like, yes, yeah, it's a gay joke. Thank you. I just thought it was really funny. Just for no reason to write. That's not like a note that you need to write down.
Is this? Did you get it from thrift books? Or
no, I got it from Half Price Books. which is a store in, I don't know how many states it's in, but I've seen a lot of them in Texas.
Not
I
in New
like
Jersey.
half-price books.
What's that, Luke?
I like half-price books.
Yeah, it's good. I actually really like it.
I will now try to Google.
Yeah. I also think that the ending, um, I've said this before. I think I said this to you guys in Discord in the chat. I think the ending is so good, partially because of the numbing that Hemingway sets up, like how
Yeah.
numb the world feels, and then conversely, how lovey-dovey the his time with Catherine feels.
Yeah.
And then Catherine dies, and the numb is back in full force for that last paragraph. That's why the last paragraph is so good in my opinion. And so it's tragic because he's a soldier in World War One, not even fighting for his own country. And then he escapes and life is good. And then tragedy strikes and we're right back, except probably worse. And I think that's what makes the ending so good.
Yeah. And I like how I'm speculating, but he breaks away from his usual style a little bit because he uses the word very a lot. There's like very, 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 like all that. So I'm assuming like it's so manic. I don't have the book in front of me because I got it on a Kindle. But it was just like um he's starting to break away from his style just a bit, just enough, tastefully, just to make sure like it's driving home like, oh, this is not supposed to be happening.
Yeah.
So yeah. Luke, you haven't said much. Do you have any other insights? Because I'm like,
Do you have anything you want to say about the book?
Not really. The ending was awesome.
well, not awesome as in like, wow, that was great. Like,
It was
woo!
awe-inspiring.
Yeah. That's about it, really. That's
Yeah.
all I took away from the book.
It's fair.
Maybe I might revisit it with the new perspective of it's supposed the lovey-dovey stuff is supposed to be lovey-dovey, and not supposed to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
So
Well,
we'll
it is
see.
supposed to be taken seriously in that, like, the romance is supposed to be taken
Yeah.
seriously, but the point is the division between
Mm,
the war and the time spent with Catherine.
which is true.
Yeah.
Yeah. That does make me appreciate that choice more. Because I'm like, this isn't like Hemingway. What are you doing? But to sum up what we're saying, men, read more romance, watch more rom coms. Come on, we need more romance in our lives.
And to sum up this episode, try Hemingway at least.
You'll be maybe whelmed like I am, or overwhelmed like Pierce.
I definitely feel like if you come at it from a certain perspective, you're going to enjoy it. I I also love it, so like I'm not going to
Yeah.
front and say like it's hard for me to imagine somebody reading this and not liking it. That's why I kind of argue with you so much when you say you're like, yeah, I'm a little lukewarm because it's hard, it's just I like it that much that it's a little surprising to me. But anyhow, give it a shot. I think that all people, all Americans at least, should give Hemingway a shot. He's so ubiquitous and influential on writing to this day that you should give it a shot. Really,
I agree. Even though maybe my words may be disparaging, I don't take that as a condemnation of the quality of his work. It is good. It is actually something I approve of. Maybe something I appreciate more than I enjoy, but it is worth reading and getting those
yeah,
ideas from. And Luke, I'm guessing he just likes it.
yeah. Luke reads books for the plot, so he just likes it.
Just
Right,
about.
Luke? Yeah.
Hemingway does make some interesting books.
Yeah. But yeah, give Hemingway a shot. I think that's pretty much it for that. So now we'll close off, I guess, unless you have something to say, Justin.
What's next month, guys?
Oh, I guess we should mention that in our closing. Next month is Fantasy Month.
high
I
fantasy.
don't know. Oh, we're talking about the movies for the Lord of the Rings movies for bookends. So Lord of the
Entire
Rings movies
trilogy.
for bookends,
Not the Hobbit trilogy. Those
not
don't
the
exist.
Hobbit trilogy. We're not watching those for at least not for this.
I never watched. No, what are you doing?
I might watch it if I haven't seen them before. I might watch it just for at least just for Smaug for Benedict Cumberbatch as Smaug because I've seen like clips of
Okay,
it.
yeah,
And it
okay,
looks
no, yeah, you're
very
good.
good.
Yeah, and Martin
Um,
Freeman as Bilbo.
yeah.
That's great.
Anyhow, yeah, we're watching the Lord of the Rings trilogy for bookends.
Maybe the extended? Probably not. It's too much.
And Justin already spoiled what he's reading. He's reading Lord of the Rings. I've already read Lord of the Rings, and Luke has read some of it. So that we'll be able to discuss. I read the entire Witcher saga plus some of the short stories.
He's also played the games and
I also
watched
played
the show.
the games and watched the show. So I'm a bit of a Witcher aficionado.
He was tipping his fedora in case we podcast
Yeah.
listeners didn't see.
Luke, what were you gonna read? I know you were between some stuff.
I'm not sure. Two Towers
I'm on that
or
just the Two Towers.
Oathbringer, the third Stormlight Archive book.
Holy cow, that's a lot of pages.
Yeah.
They go by faster than Lord of the Rings, though.
That is
Really?
true.
Oh my god, they go by so fast.
Dang.
Brandon Sanderson is so simple to read.
I want to get to Brandon Sanderson eventually. Anyways, so yeah, that's the lineup for Fantasy
It'll
Month.
probably be our longest episode.
Get hyped. We have lots to talk about. Yeah. This episode has actually been one of our longer ones recently. We've been recording for over an hour, I think. I might
wait till Fantasy Month. You're gonna eat your words.
Yeah, I am gonna eat my words. All right. You can find us on Twitter at Not Just Any Pod, where we release information on this show as well as our other one, Not Just Any RPG, which is about tabletop RPGs. So check that out if you like those. Then the other thing. Is there something else? Am I forgetting something?
I mean, twitch.tv/not just any RPG, because we're playing Dungeons and Dragons right now. And
Yes.
it's the Fantasy Month.
Oh, true.
Yeah, we can tie it in there.
True. You can also find Not Just Any RPG on Spotify and YouTube and podcasting platforms.
Yeah, and also rate us, make us happy, and rate us very well. Like rate us 5 stars.
On both shows, please.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's it then.
I absolutely have nothing to say, but goodbye, Prometheus.